So, welcome back to Mike's Playhouse. Austin Meyer coming at you from XForcePC. Just doing one of my usual little afternoon film shoots on whatever's kind of cool in X-Plane. And today we are asking the question, how many Garmin 1000s is enough Garmin 1000s? And the answer today is 4. 4 Garmin 1000s is enough. So what we have here is the Simionic G1000 on the top and the RealSimGear G1000 on the bottom. And so let me just give you a tiny bit of history here. It used to be that we would have to take real Garmin 1000s from Garmin and try to plug them into X-Plane. It was a disaster. The tech support from Garmin was a disaster. The ability to get data to and from X-Plane to the Garmin was a disaster. The cost was a disaster. You had to pay like tens of thousands of dollars for the whole setup. The whole thing was a disaster. We barely managed to get it work for a few clients. Thank God that code is deleted and we don't have to do it anymore. We have something way better now, and that is the Simionic and the RealSimGear G1000 hardware packages. So let's talk about the convenience. The convenience, off the chart easy. These are both just things you can buy online, plug them into X-Plane, you're good to go. Worst case scenario, you drop in a little plug-in file or a little ART asset into X-Plane to make it work. That's it. The convenience, off the charts easy. Let's talk about pricing. It's $2,000 for both of them. This is the RealSimGear made in the USA. It's $2,000, okay? It's $2,000 for this hardware, and it's showing Garmin graphics that are rendered by X-Plane. So these are X-Plane graphics showing on the RealSimGear $2,000 bezels. And so all you've really got here is just some bezels for 2,000 bucks. The Simionic is a little bit different. The Simionic is $1,600 for the bezels, $400 cheaper, but you got to drop in a couple of iPads. These are plain old regular size iPads in here. Now the Simionics apps that you get from the App Store, just Google Simionics G1000, you'll find the apps on the App Store. They're $10 extra. But get the little $10 Simionics apps, drop them onto your pad, drop them into your $1,600 bezels, and you're good to go. Now, those pads need to be pad 3 or greater. Pads Gen 1 and 2 don't have enough RAM. They come up a little short on memory to let this work. So you need pads 3 or greater. And Mike, do you watch iPad pricing? Do you know how much it costs to get you a couple of regular old iPads, maybe used, let's say Gen 3 or 4, something like that? How much they run?
400 each is probably more like what you need to budget.
Oh, 400 each.
More like around 2,400 for the Simionic.
Oh, I see. Okay, so it's $400 for each pad. Maybe the Simionics is a little more expensive, but in the grand scheme of things, it ain't much. And if you ever get tired of this, you can always pull out the iPads and you have pads.
Try out the Simionic. You don't have to buy the bezels.
Ooh, that's another cool thing. That's right. As Mike just pointed out, if you get the iPads and you put the Simionics apps on there, which are only like $10 or $20 or something cheap like that, it looks like, yeah, I guess they're 20 bucks. I think maybe $10 each. Then you can try them out in X-Plane without having to spring for your $1,600 bezel, you see? So just get some iPads or use iPads you already have, get the Simionics apps from the App Store, boom, you're in for 20 bucks and you can try the whole thing. You're just using these awkward little touchscreen interfaces, okay? It's spring for the $1,600 additional dollars, and you get the bezels. So both of these are solutions that let us practice Garmin 1000 in X-Plane without having to deal with Garmin, the company, and the huge tech support and financial nightmare that's associated with that. And I say this from plenty of experience. I'm not making that up. Let's talk just a little more now about each of these companies. Now that we've covered the history, let's cover the companies. This is the Garmin 1000. Basically, it's coded by Philip Munzel. Now, some of you know Philip from the flight sim presentations and stuff he has attended. And so Philip does the G1000 simulations inside of X-Plane. Of course, I wrote X-Plane, but now I have more and more people doing little bits and pieces to higher detail than I ever could. And Philip is doing that with the Garmin 1000s. And Philip, by the way, is immigrating to the United States to become a United States citizen. And one of the things he had to do that is show up at like US Customs and Border Control with a sealed envelope containing chest x-rays. That's the level of just like idiotic paranoia part of the idiotic paranoia that the federal government is subjecting Philip to come in here and do a better job, help making X-Plane better, which to me is asinine. Now let's talk about Simionics. So there's a guy named Li Chen in China, born in China, Chinese person, Chinese citizen, the whole 9 yards. And from his perch in China, without doing anything more than coming to Florida to get his pilot's license and going back to China, he single-handedly developed this entire thing. Now, to realize what a challenge that is, imagine you, assuming you're not from China watching this, are sitting in your chair and I came up to you and said, I want you to develop a complete simulation of the avionics system of a Chinese airplane. Go. What chance would you have of being able to do that? The fact that this guy from China is able to learn the G1000 and iPad architecture and setup to do such an incredible job that's basically, you know, as you see, identical to Philip Munsell's job, is absolutely huge. And the idea of saying that we should be afraid of trading with China just seems every bit as stupid and asinine as Philip's chest x-ray. So anyway, let's just say running laminar research, where I interact with a lot of different people, I really enjoy working with people from other countries and cultures, and sometimes the paranoia we see here is a little bit, shall we say, misguided, it seems to me. And that's an understatement. But, okay, so there's a little bit of the history of the Garmin 1000 setups, a little bit of the culture and the people behind these two different pieces of hardware. We've covered pricing, and we've covered the basics of how they work. These are iPads, again, they can be used if you have them lying around the house. That'll cut you down by about $400 a unit or so if you can drop a used iPad in here. And these come with the little backlit computer displays. Mike, do you know what type of computer displays these are here in the RealSimGear? What am I supposed to call these things? CRTs or mini computers? What do I call them?
Panels.
IPS panels.
Yes, the best kind of panel for clarity and viewing angles and so forth.
Right. And sure enough, off screen, I can absolutely still read them. And I can basically tell you, having flown about, gosh, I've probably flown 2,000 hours in real airplanes behind Garmin's, I can tell you that these look just like the real thing. And I'm talking about the bezels, the displays, everything. I basically am almost saying I could be sitting here in the real airplane looking at these Garmin's. Okay, today we're flying a Cessna 172. And we're going to do something a little bit interesting here. I'm going to fly some instrument approaches now in X-Plane. And we're going to fly with these to compare and contrast these two units.
And by the way, before you do that, maybe you should talk about what aircraft are compatible with each.
Oh, right. Oh, that's a good one. Okay, so Mike pointed out basically what is the most important part of this whole presentation, which is which one of these two should you get? And I do have an answer to that, and here it is. In the Simionics, you can simulate any of about 4 different airplanes. You can simulate a Cessna 172S, a Cessna 172R, a Cessna 182T, or for an additional $1.99, a Beechcraft Baron G58. So you can simulate 4 different aircraft on this. With X-Plane, this is running the X-Plane G1000 simulation, where all of the engine types and ranges auto-adapt to the aircraft you are flying in X-Plane, no matter what airplane it is.
And I can say there's probably, off the top of my head, around 10 planes supported. This, the same ones mentioned above, plus a few others.
Supported down here with the RealSimGear. Yeah, but here's the thing, though. It's actually unlimited, and here's why.
Well, someone could always create another plane.
Right.
Yes.
Exactly. So in other words, if you, the viewer, decide to make your own airplane in PlaneMaker, and it can be a flying saucer, I don't care. You make any airplane you want in PlaneMaker. Let's say your maximum propeller RPM is 2,850 and your maximum oil pressure is 175 psi and your maximum cylinder head temperature is 322 degrees. Whatever the engine limits are that you put in PlaneMaker are part of the G1000 and X-Plane and will be reflected on this screen. And they're going to be reflected on this screen in the RealSimGear because the RealSimGear is doing nothing but showing the avionics in X-Plane. And of course the avionics in X-Plane has access to all the markings and green arcs and red arcs and temperature and pressure and RPM limits and voltage and amperage limits. So you see all the limits that you enter for your airplane in PlaneMaker are obviously loaded into X-Plane. X-Plane obviously displays all that on its Garmin. The X-Plane Garmin is displayed here. And so all the limits that you entered in PlaneMaker should and will be reflected here in the engine display. That is not the case with the Simionics, is it? Because the Simionics, it's just an iPad app. It doesn't have access to all the stuff you entered in PlaneMaker. So with the Simionics, it can only choose from 4 different airplanes. So which one should you buy? I'm going to cut to the chase right now before I go into the quality of each unit. The answer is, if you want to simulate a Cessna 172S, Cessna 172R, Cessna 182, or Beech Baron, you should almost certainly get the Simionics because it won't slow X-plane down at all. All of the processing power can be done by the pads. Lee Chen, who wrote this, can dial in the detail just perfectly for these 4 different airplanes. And so for the Cessna 172S, Cessna 172R, Cessna 182T, or Baron G58, you will get a perfect G1000, or nearly perfect, as you're going to find out, a nearly perfect G1000 simulation run on iPads that does not slow X-plane down at all because X-plane's not doing the processing. You want the Simionics in that case. If you're doing some airplane other than those, then you need the Garmin to auto-adapt all the RPM and power and temperature and pressure and voltage and amperage and airspeed and all that stuff to the aircraft that you entered in PlaneMaker. And in that case, you want to use the RealSimGear. Mike has a question. Brown, go.
So the thing that someone's asking right now is, well, how much do the RealSimGear slow down X-plane? Just top of my head, it's about 10% of your frame rate you lose when you put those 2 panels down there.
And fine, and you can find out yourself without spending $2,000. You know how to find out yourself without spending $2,000, don't you?
Well, yeah, you just hook up a monitor, two monitors to your computer.
Well, how about easier than that? Just open an airplane that has a Garmin on it, like our Cessna 172 G1000, look at the frame rate, and then go to full screen no HUD, so no Garmins are drawn, look at the frame rate.
Yeah.
You see, whatever the difference is, that's the Garmin time.
I think you might have to actually pop it into a window as well by hitting the upper right corner to see that frame rate drop. You know, in the upper right corner, you hit it.
Yeah, and then it expands.
And then you can take it off screen.
Right, okay, you can try that too. So in other words, you don't have to spend $2,000 to find out if the RealSimGear is going to hurt your frame rate very much. Simply get into an airplane that comes with X-plane that has a Garmin 1000, look at the frame rate in the cockpit view, go to full screen no HUD, which is like Shift W, and see how much the frame rate goes up. That's what happens when you get rid of the cockpit in the G1000. And yeah, there'll be a small difference, but who cares? It's not a big difference. When it comes to providing you with this level of hardware support, it's freaking worth it. If you want to try out the RealSimGear, no need to blow $1,600. Get those apps for $20 off the App Store. Drop on some iPads, grab the plugin from RealSimGear, and just fly it on the pads with touchscreen.
Because yes, it does have a touch interface, but it's not something you'd want to use
right.
on a regular basis.
But you can do a touch interface here, as you see. So both products have a way for you to try it without blowing $2,000. With X-plane, just try a regular G1000 on screen, like a Cessna 172 G1000 that comes with X-plane. With Simionics, download the apps from the App Store. So you can try them both. They both cost the same amount of money, and the one you want to use is almost certainly the Simionics for the few airplanes that they simulate, and the RealSimGear for all other aircraft. Now, that said, I think I've pretty much already briefed you on everything you need to know to make your purchasing decision and to try it out. But why not just go a little farther with this? Why don't we really look at how good these things actually are? And so for the next 10 or 15 minutes of this video, might be a little boring. If you feel like you got the information you need, no harm done if you log off now. So what we're going to do, for the rest of you that want to see how good these things are, is we're going to take a little flight. Okay, and so we just took a quick little break there, and now we're ready to do some flying. So I did something to prepare for this presentation. Yesterday, in my evolution, I flew the exact approach in my real airplane that we're about to fly here. And I took very careful mental note of everything the Garmins are doing in my airplane while I flew that approach. And so now when we fly it here, if there's anything that's wrong, I won't be like, oh, I don't know if that's wrong or not. No, I just flew this exact approach in my airplane. I'll know if it's right or wrong. We are flying a Cessna 172 because the Cessna 172 is one of the airplanes we can choose for the Simionics. Problem is, I'm not going to waste my time or yours wandering around South Carolina at 90 knots in a Cessna 172. So for the additional challenge factor, the entire flight will be flown at 2x ground speed. So we're going to turn our 110 knot Cessna 172 at wide open throttle to a 220 knot airplane, which is about how fast I operate my Evolution at low altitudes when I'm doing approaches. So this entire thing is going to be flown at 2x ground speed to make the 172 match my Evolution, which is a little bit funny. And we're going to do it at wide open throttle as well. Okay, let's punch the throttle. And so this is basically the Austin Meyer 200 knot challenge, where I have to fly the entire flight at 2x speed. But there's really no excuse, and wide open throttle.
Okay, here's another negative of the Simionic.
Okay, ready.
You see it?
I see it. Oh, software update to install. Oh, that's so annoying. Okay.
You have an iPad software update pop up in the middle of your flight.
Yeah. But I mean, that's not the end of the world. I mean, talk about first world problems, right? But yes, it is a little bit annoying. Okay, so now what we're going to do, and notice this speed here is low. Even though I'm doing 200 knots, it's because we have a 2x ground speed in X-plane, which is doubling our speed. But this actually comes from the airspeed indicator in X-plane. So it's going to be a little bit of a trick for me to fly 200 knots while we're indicating like 90 knots here, but that's part of the challenge for me for this approach. Okay, so I just blasted off out of CUB, which is my home airport. And let's try zooming out. Oh, so let's just talk about these Avionics for a moment. They look exactly like real Garmin's, but they don't feel like Garmin's. Okay, the real Garmin and the real airplane has a really solid, heavy feel. The buttons have weight. You have to apply a lot of pressure to turn them. They go click, click, click. You know, you have to push through each detent to get a reaction. The Garmin's and the actual airplane have just this wonderful avionics feel to them. Everything is solid and heavy and force loaded and damped. Both of these lack that. Both of these have this really kind of lightweight, kind of flimsy kind of feel. You can tell the knobs are made out of a lighter weight material. They don't have much resistance. Once you put in enough power to turn the knob, it just wants to kind of keep on turning because it doesn't come up against detents that stop it. And so both of these Avionics do indeed lack a lot of the tactile force required to use the real Garmin's. This is a drawback because when you want to grab something and turn it and not have it go an extra 3 or 4 clicks by mistake. I'll say this, not that it should affect your purchasing decision, but the RealSimGear might just be a little bit better. The Simionics might feel a little lighter, and the Simionic and the RealSimGear feels maybe just a little closer to the real airplane. Okay, so now we're going to fly the same flight I flew yesterday. We're going to say direct, HIJK, and what I do a lot when I practice is I go to Camden, which is just down the road from my airport. HIJKLMN, enter, enter. Okay, so we're going to Camden, and I'm just going to do everything twice. Direct. Okay, K, C, D, HIJKLMN.
I'm definitely hearing that click a lot louder.
Yeah, exactly.
On the RealSimGear.
Right, the RealSimGear is neither airplane feels like a real, or neither hardware suite feels like a real Garmin 1000. They look like it, they act like it, they behave like it, but they don't feel like it. But definitely the RealSimGear is closer. And if Simionics, talking to you, Lee Chen, it were to come up with like a heavier, higher resistant knob, it would definitely be a step up in quality. Okay, so now we're going direct to Camden. Now we don't have synthetic vision on either of these. Synthetic vision is available on the RealSimGear for a small additional charge, and synthetic vision, hopefully I can get Philip to find time to add one of these days. And I'll give him like the Avion source code or something to save him a bunch of time building a synthetic vision system. So synthetic vision is not currently here, but you can buy it for this, and we'll ultimately build it into X-Plane here. Okay, so both of these are basically working like the real plane. I would say when it comes to the line thickness and brightness and text and iconography, perhaps not surprisingly, the RealSimGear. I mean, I'm sorry, the Simionics is a little better.
Say your zoom the same, because I don't think the zoom is the same. Because I don't see that lake on the bottom one.
Okay, we can zoom out a little.
There we go.
There's Lake Murray.
There, now
okay.
they're the same.
Yeah, and so just the brightness and thickness of everything of the lines, it's better in Simionics a little bit. This just feels more like the real airplane. But on the other hand, the elevation maps and the water and the coastline, that's better in the X-Plane one. And there's a reason for that. The X-Plane G1000 has access to all of the X-Plane elevation, water, and coastline files, which is a 60 gig deliverable. Anybody that's done a full install of X-Plane knows it's 60 gig by the time you've done the whole world of scenery. However, poor Lee Chen, with his iPad apps, is only allowed to get about 2 gig or so through the App Store. So Lee has much lower resolution elevation databases. So They have a little lower resolution databases for Lee, but he's got the higher contrast and bright lines that you have in the real airplane. Philip has his nice high-res DEMS, but he hasn't quite dialed in his line thickness and stuff. You see, so we're down to absolute nits here. I'm like looking for something to complain about just so I can justify being on camera. This doesn't matter when it comes to learning how to fly a G1000 airplane though. Okay, now let's see if we can dial in an approach. Let's go to Procedure, select Approach, Camden. Let's take the 6 from Yes Lou, and we're going to activate. Boom. Okay, now we're going to do the same thing here. Procedure, select Approach, or nav 6 from Yes Lou. Enter. I don't feel like doing any course reversals. I never do course reversals. Who has time to go backwards? And so, and then here we have Phillips. So now we are going to see if we can fly this approach. And the rule is we say at 2x ground speed. Another rule is I do the whole thing at wide open throttle. I'm not allowed to slow down. So, but that's to try and keep you guys from getting bored watching. Otherwise, I'd be at it for who knows how long. Okay, so the altitude at Yezo happened to know is about 3,700 feet. Now this is interesting. Okay, I'm going to pause for one sec. I'm going to pause for just a second here. The Garmin's do not really do a good job at all of showing you what altitude you're supposed to be at. Okay, and that's the real Garmin's as well. The real Garmin's also don't show you the altitude. So I'm going to run my little app here called Xavion. And I've done another video on Xavion that shows all this. But with Xavion, when you dial in an approach, it actually shows you the altitude. So let's go nav, direct, KCDN. Okay, so here we go. So I don't know, I'll zoom in on editing if necessary. But when I dial this approach into my Xavion, which you can also get at the App Store, it actually gives you the altitudes for each fix. And this is one of the areas where Xavion is better than a Garmin 1000 in my opinion.
A piece of paper or
Right. So in other words, when you fly this approach in the real airplane, you need a physical paper approach plate in your lap, or ForeFlight, which shows you all the plates, or Xavion, which shows you all the plates, or do what I do these days and I fly instrument approaches in reality, which is just fly it on Xavion. And because I see all of my my fixes. Now, some people, when they hear that, they're like, but the Xavion's not certified, that's illegal. And they make all their stupid little rules they're just dying to accuse somebody else of violating, right? It's got no connection to common sense or anything. It's just they want to find something to complain about. Well, don't worry. When I fly Xavion on my real airplane, I have the iPad up here showing the approach, but it does not obscure the view of the Garmin's. And so I've got the Garmin's as like my official navigation with the Xavion showing me what's actually really going on. And Xavion has more information more easily presented, including the altitudes. So we know we want to hit Yeslu at 3,700 and WebEx at 2,000. Okay, let's unpause and away we go. So, okay, well, this probably won't even be visible. I guess we can do that just if anybody wants to see the Garmin or see Xavion. Okay, so here we go. So we're going to hit Yeslu, and I want to be at or above 3,700, which we basically are. And then I want to hit WebEx at 2,000. And both of these seem to be doing basically what the real Garmin does. And as you can see, Xavion has a synthetic vision system where you just fly through the hoops to get there. So, and Xavion is just available at the App Store. And these are the avionics that I wrote. This is the way I think it should be, which is a little bit different from the way Garmin thinks it should be. And it's good that what I want is a little different than what Garmin wants, because that's what gives the consumers freedom of choice. All right, so we're now turning into Yes Lou. Oops, I'm below 3,700. So there we go. If that had been a check ride, I would have just failed it because I was supposed to be at 3,700, not 3,000. So I failed that one. But let's see. All right, coming into WebEx, we want to be, yeah, and you can see I'm low in Xavion, right? Because I'm way down at the bottom of the hoops. So, I mean, all I had to do was just stay in the middle of the hoops in Xavion and I would have been fine. Now you see why I like Xavion more than the Garmin's? With the Garmin's, I don't know the altitude. I'm way off of altitude and I make these kind of mistakes. With the Xavion, all I do is stay in the middle of the hoops, and the hoops have already been laid out at all the right altitudes. All I have to do is stay in the middle of the hoops and the whole approach will be fine. So, I mean, talk about an example of why Xavion's better than Garmin, for me at least. Okay, so if I stay in the middle of the hoops on Xavion anyway, I should hit WebEx at about 2,000. And both these units, by the way, are behaving exactly like the real Garmin here. This is doing exactly what my real airplane did yesterday. Now, At this point, the Simionic has a little bit of a fail, and here it is. You'll notice I'm getting a GPS-derived glide path on Philips G1000, which is the one from X-Plane.
Is that the little pink dot?
Yes, it's like a glide slope, but it's not based on a glide slope transmitter. It's based on GPS guidance. We call it a virtual glide slope or GPS-derived glide slope. The Simionic one should be showing that now. Let me make sure that I let it sequence. Okay. Now here's the thing. The Simionic one, the reason the Simionic one isn't showing, I bet, is because I didn't go back and fly the little procedure turn or the little course reversal back here. And so the Simionic one probably hasn't, in fact, I can guarantee you it hasn't sequenced up yet because I didn't fly the course reversal. The thing is, I didn't fly the course reversal in my real airplane, and I still got the GPS virtual glide path. Okay, so let's say that maybe the Simionics has the tiniest little nit. You have to fly the course reversal to have it sequenced to the next step. Whereas the real airplane did not require me to fly the course reversal. And anybody that watched the video closely just now will remember that Philips G1000 said, do you want to fly the course reversal? And I said, no, I never go backwards. The Simionics didn't ask me, did it? And so basically the Simionics, and now we'll go to the miss, okay? And the Simionics assumed that, that I would fly the course reversal, and when I didn't, it got out of sequence. So let's do this. Let's come back around and fly the course reversal and then see if we get our GPS-derived glide path. So we're going to fly it around back here, and we're going to go right back to YesLu and try our course reversal. See if it sequences and see if we get our GPS-derived glide path on the Simionics. And that way we can prove that this is a sequencing and a course reversal issue, not a failure of Leech to code the GPS-derived glide path. Okay, my altitude control is, of course, terrible. Okay. All right, I'm going to save a little bit of time. We'll do time acceleration here. We'll go to 16x ground speed to hop on out to YesLu real quick. Okay, now I'm going to go back to just regular old 2x ground speed here. And let's see if I can figure out how to fly this course reversal. Now, to be honest, I'm not sure exactly what this little oval means. I don't know if I'm supposed to fly a procedure turn, if I'm supposed to be doing a direct entry, a teardrop entry, a parallel entry. I'm not really sure how I'm supposed to do this, to be honest.
Tell me about that flash. Do you see that on the...
Yeah, okay. The real Garmin does not do this. Yeah, so with this thing, with the Simionics, we get this screen kind of flash black every time we zoom in or out. The real Garmin does not do this, no. So that's another tiny little ding on Simionics. Okay. Another thing is I'm not really quite sure exactly how I'm supposed to fly this course reversal. Now this may be my fault, by the way, not Simionics. It may be that the real Garmin shows a hoop like this for the course reversal. I don't know because I didn't do that in my airplane yesterday, sorry. So we've gone off the script here a little bit. But all right, let's see if I can fly back here, call this a course reversal, staying within the pattern the whole time, and see if it'll sequence. So Mike, when you post a YouTube video with a description, can you edit the description later on after it's been, okay, good. Because when I post this, Lee might email me and say, Austin, this is what you did wrong. And I'm like, no, and I'll put his little correction in the description here of the video if I'm the one at fault for this. Yeah, you see, it's not sequencing. You see, so I don't know whether to call this a bug in my understanding or in Lee's coding, because I'm definitely hitting YesLu, definitely doing a course reversal there, and it's not sequencing to the next fix. And Philip kind of sidestepped the whole problem by saying, do you want to do a course reversal, just like the Garmin does? And Lee seemed to skip that. So this looks like a little thing that Lee could actually improve on. And if I'm the one making a mistake, I'll shoot him an email and ask him, and then he'll explain. I'll put that in the video description.
Yeah, the video description. Check the video description.
Yeah, check the video description. I'm not going to automatically blame somebody else when it might be my mistake. Okay, so let me pause here. Let's talk about setup here just a little bit. The RealSimGear. Mike, tell us about the RealSimGear setup. What do you do to get, let's say you buy the RealSimGear, people want to set it up quickly. What's the name of the game on that?
Well, those are both considered monitors. So okay. You arrange them in Windows as far as... In Microsoft Windows. Microsoft Windows. You just put, the monitors in the correct arrangement. Mm-hmm. And then you install the plugin.
Okay, installing the plugin means?
Just copying a folder into your plugins folder.
It's just file, not a folder, right? It's just one single file. It's the plugin bridge.
That's Simionic.
Oh, right. Okay, go on. Continue with RealSimGear.
They both require a plugin in X-Plane.
Uh-huh.
And then lastly, you have to replace the X-Plane G1000 artwork with just basically, they provide it to you, but it gets rid of the knobs and buttons and all that on the screen.
Right. You see, because if you have the X-Plane Garmin 1000, you'll have images of all these knobs and buttons and stuff. You want to get rid of that, so you just drop in the RealSimGear little replacement file that just replaces that with nothing, so that you can get a full screen graphics here with the physical bezel. The Simionics is a little bit more involved. You're going to take the Simionics plugin and drop in your X-Plane plugin folder, trivial. You're going to take your iPads and drop them into here. Be ready for about an hour with Allen wrenches and screwdrivers and stuff like that to get that done. It's about how long it took me to do them both, to get all the plugs and stuff inside of there, but doable. And then here's the kind of funny part. Once you drop the iPad in, you can't get to the home button anymore on the iPad. And so what Lee says is we're supposed to use Siri to control the iPad. I have no idea how to use Siri to control an iPad, and how do you even use Siri when the iPad's turned off? I don't even know if that's possible. I don't even think it should be possible. So what I did,
it goes completely dead. How do you turn it back on?
Yeah, no idea. So I took a power drill and went, and I drilled this in with a nice 1/4-inch power drill. Do this before you put the iPads in, right? So before I had the iPads on, drilled a little power drill in, dropped the iPads in, and now with the iPads into the power drill, I can hit the home button on the iPad by sticking a little pen or an Allen wrench or something like that through to hit the home button. When I emailed Lee this, I was like, I just use a power drill so I get to the home button. He's like, Austin, you've ruined my Garmin bezels, but to me, it's not ruined. I like to be able to get to the home button, even if I do have to drill holes in my Avionics to do it. Yeah, so so do I. But at any rate, so first you drill the hole in the bezel, drop in the iPad, and just use a little pen to hit the home button. And then for setup, what you want to make sure you do is you hit the upper right corner, and then you go to hardware bezel, and there'll be a list of bezels. Make sure that you choose the right one, which you'll do by hitting line selects and whatnot. And then you see the latest version here. This is a nice little feature. You see the latest version right here at the bottom, and just compare that to the actual version in the About menu to make sure you really have the latest version. So for example, right here, latest PFD is 5.21, this is 5.21. Latest MFD 5.20, this is 5.20. So make sure you go to you hit the upper right corner to invoke the menu, make sure you have the latest version, an update from the App Store is necessary, and make sure you choose the right hardware bezel. And then of course, finally, obviously, make sure that you launch the PFD app on the PFD and the MFD app on the MFD. These are the two $10 apps you get from the App Store. So I think that's the bottom line is they're both great. They're both pretty easy to set up. If you just remember those 1 or 2 little hints I gave you on the Simionics. They both look exactly like the real thing. They both behave almost exactly like the real thing, with a few little graphics and maybe this little sequencing thing addressed in the future. The physical knob feedback is pretty bad on both of them, but they're set up like the real thing. And the bottom line is for $2,000 and a small amount of hassle, you are basically 85% of the way, maybe 90% of the way to having a real Garmin in X-Plane, which is just a kick-ass solution. It'd be crazy not to do it if you fly a real Garmin airplane, but only fly it, rarely, and you want to keep up your practice in the sim. You'd be crazy not to get one of these.
So
Mike.
With the RealSimGear 2, you need 2 available monitor connections.
Oh, yeah.
4 USB connections, which could be achieved with a USB hub if you had it.
Right.
2 monitor connections, 4 USB connections.
Right, yeah, the RealSimGear just goes through USB connections. It's something of a minor miracle that we got all of these working at once. With the Simionics, you're going to log these into the Wi-Fi, the same Wi-Fi as X-Plane, and you're going to have 3 USB connections, because this is the third one, Mike. You're going to have 3 USB connections to keep your stuff from going dead in the middle of flight. You'll want to have those plugged in to keep your little pads charged up during flight so they don't go dead on you.
Right, but they don't need a physical connection to the computer. It can just be plugged into a wall out with USB charger.
That's correct. That's right. You're only doing juice.
It has to be plugged into the computer.
Right, okay, so the RealSimGear is plugged into the computer. This gets the stuff from Wi-Fi, so it uses a Wi-Fi hotspot to get data. All you got to do is get some juice to the pads. So, yes, that's a layout. I highly encourage people to get this if you're getting a Cessna 172, 182, or Baron, and this the RealSimGear if you want to find anything else. And shoot questions in the comments, and I usually get around to reading the comments a day or two after I post the video, and I'll respond accordingly.